Broadcasting from the Bayou State and all around the Gulf Coast and streaming nationwide. This is the C.L. Bryant Show.
It's Friday, but just not any Friday. Throughout the world, it is known as Good Friday, the Friday that is commemoration of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. To all people of Christian faith throughout the world, it is a high, holy day, second only to the Sunday that we celebrate the resurrection of the man we and the personality that we have come to believe to be the Lord of Lords and King of Kings, Jesus the Christ. I am C.L. Bryant. This is the C.L. Bryant Show, and I want to welcome each and every one of you here to the show today. It is going to be a show that is absolutely jam-packed and interesting. Steve Hawkins is coming up with me here a little bit later on in the show. And also we have the filmmaker, the film Woodlawn, will be on with me as well. And so I look forward to having you with me. I'm going to share some things with you about our faith and about this time of the year. Can you believe it? The year, we're a quarter. It's a quarter past, gone. A quarter of this year is gone. We're at Easter already. Independence Day, 4th of July, will soon be up on us. Before then, we have Memorial Day coming up. All of the great holidays, great summer holidays, are on their way. And we're going to have a very special time in America coming up here right soon. I want to remind us, though, as we take the time to remember people of faith, Christian faith in particular, but I want to share this number. It's a staggering number. I often ask myself, could I have been an early Christian? You know, the ones who faced the lions, the fire pits, and all of the persecution that went into the founding of our faith. And, of course, you say, yeah, sure, you know, you'd like to believe that that could be so for you. But think of this number that I'm about to give you, this figure that I'm about to give you. 90,000 people last year lost their lives because of their faith around the world. 90,000 people around the world lost their lives because of their faith. And then you ask yourself the question again, could I have been an early Christian? Well, the reason I'm bringing it up now in the year 2017 instead of 35 AD, 40 AD, and on up through the Middle Ages is because there seemed to be a persecution taking place again of people of faith. There is no question in my mind that ISIS is all about wiping out any semblance of Christianity. The other day when we look at the murder of Coptic Christians in Egypt, bomb being placed under the pews in that church, you have to ask yourself, what type of human being does this kind of thing? I gave you the example a couple of days ago, maybe a week ago now, where a Christian missionary in Southeast Asia, stripped of his clothing, placed into a dark, dank cell, and his only company in that cell was a large rat. Yeah. And that is happening right here in America as far as people well, the thought process, the mindset is happening right here in America. As far as the level of mental and lawful persecution is concerned. And there are some in America who would take it to the next level if, in fact, it were not for salt and light kind of people like you. If it wasn't for a place like America that does protect and defend our religious freedom, regardless of if you're Christian or Muslim or what have you, America is a place where your religious freedom is protected. But on this Good Friday, Christians everywhere, especially you here in America, we stream live throughout the world, but particularly here in America, when you think about the 90,000 lives of people that were lost because of their faith, I hope that we can give you this day a greater idea and a desire to protect religious liberty in this country. Because surely it doesn't take much for a country like ours to become a country like theirs. The world may seem like a large place, but it is not. And with the influx of people coming from there to here without assimilating to the ideas of liberty and life and personal happiness, here can become there very soon. That's the importance of not being a multicultural country, but being one country, one nation, under the Creator God that our founders felt it was so necessary to put into our founding documents. We'll talk a little bit more about it when I return. I'm CL. Don't go anywhere. CL back with you on this Friday, the Friday that we commemorate the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. On this Good Friday, the question that I have posed is, could you have been an early Christian? Could you have been an early person of faith, paving the way, trailblazing the way for what the faith has become now? In light of 90,000 last year, and there are humanitarian organizations that keep track of this type of thing, and this figure actually may be low. Because there are some in China and places like that who lose their lives daily for their faith that are never truly recorded. You can't actually record it. And so that figure may be low. But 90,000 is definitely high in my estimation. 2 is high, thinking from my American mentality. 1 is high from my American mentality, where we have or should have religious liberty. But you ask people like Hobby Lobby, Chick-fil-A, people who own stores that won't violate their core beliefs as people of faith, is that religious liberty really something that can be relied on? I would say that in the past 8 years, it could not be relied on, because you did not have anyone who was dedicated to defending religious freedom. I say with great excitement but caution that I believe we do now. Still, on this high and holy weekend in the Christian faith, I believe there need to be a seed planted again that will produce a different harvest for Americans. The kind that once produced, the kind of seed that once produced the type of Americans we had before we put faith in the words of those who we elect to office, before government became God. The kind of people we had governing our nations, running our communities, and pastoring our churches before government became God. I never will forget the famous words out of the 60s, God is dead and has been replaced with thousands of government agents. We need to plant a seed again, and I pray that there are some of us, so many of us, I do my best wherever I go to plant the seeds that will produce an American harvest that put on our money, that put the words on our money, in God we trust. And of course, they've been trying to remove that the same way they have removed that type of reverence from a lot of other places. I have a dear, blessed friend of mine, and several around the nation, who wonder why I still call myself reverend when the scripture tells us that only God is reverend. I don't call myself reverend. I am the reverend, which means that my position, my job description is to reverence God. I'm not that arrogant to think that I could possibly be any reverend anything. But the true description of what that is, and people have distorted it, particularly those in other faith beliefs, ones that I came out of, when, they forget that that's just a job description. The reverend is a job description of what you are put here to do, and that is to reverence God. That's the description. Not who you are, but it describes what you should do. And on days like today, this is what everyone who is called by his name should be doing. Is reverencing what we can do for him. And God we trust is on our money. And when we look at if we could have been, when we look at the possibility of what we may be facing, because we will stand up and defend our faith in this country, in this world. A lot of people are not wanting to travel outside of the country anymore, especially if you're a Christian, because it's so dangerous. You do have a clear and present danger to yourself traveling in other parts of the world because of absolute evil that does exist. I told you yesterday that Assad and the Russians are saying that the Americans were, that bombing, the poisoning and all of that, that was a lie. They're saying it was a lie. The Americans staged that. They're saying that was make-believe. So you're not only dealing with people who are evil, but they're evil and delusional. Do you understand me? Are you hearing what I'm telling you? They're evil and they are delusional. That, my friends, is the world we live in. Be back with more C.L. Bryant Show when I return. I certainly hope we can go out tonight. Yeah, because there could be. There is, no doubt about it, a bad moon rising, but the power of darkness, as far as Christians have believed, is broken. And the reminder of it is a day like today. I was asking the question about you. Your faith. What is it? Maybe you're not a person of faith at all. It still doesn't make you a bad American, but it was people of faith, incredible faith, who did in fact found this nation. and then found it necessary to put in place ideas in its documents, its founding documents, that religious freedom would be protected regardless of what your faith may be. Now, it all hinges on this day, this day that we are commemorating. This day does hinge upon a faith proposition. And I'm going to give you a scenario here, because this is going to replay on our friend station, The Promise. And I want this scenario to be there, to be available, and especially in this first hour. Coming up a little bit later on, I have two very special guests. But in this hour, I want to share this idea with you to give you a better idea of how the faith proposition works. For those of you who may be of little faith, no faith, I want you to hear what I'm about to say. Now, a person comes to you and says, trust me. Trust me. If you dig through the dirt, and they hand you these seeds, and they tell you that if you'll plant these seeds in the dirt. Now, keep in mind, you've never seen this person. You never even heard of the concept of planting before. You never heard of the concept of farming before. But the person comes to you and says, trust me. If you will dig in the dirt and plant these tiny seeds in the dirt, you can eat. It'll grow food, so you can eat. And you'll be able to identify the various different plants that come up. I'm telling you, it'll be good for you. They'll be good for food you can eat. I don't know if you'd actually believe that, but if you're hungry and you're needing a way to have some substance, continual substance in your life, you have to, at some point, trust something perhaps that you cannot see. That's what faith is. It is the substance of things you cannot see, the evidence of things hoped for, and the substance of things you cannot see. You're hoping that this guy is telling you the truth about planting seeds, digging in the dirt, planting seeds and stuff come up. On this Good Friday, folks, the faith seed that was planted was the life of who we believe to be the Savior of the world. You plant that seed in the heart of the earth, 3 days later, rise again and produce harvest, making more real the words, I am the bread of life. And folks, let me share this with you too, as we look at the murders that are occurring around this world. Everyone does not share the Christian ideal, the Christian faith. They share whatever it is they happen to believe in, but that had to start somewhere. And one of the things that is so atrocious about what's happening in the Muslim world right now is that they are killing each other. They're killing Christians, they're killing Muslims. And what puzzles me, what bothers me so, is that they're doing it to incite and instill fear. by the way they do it. It is heinous. Go back with me just a couple of years ago when ISIS came to power, when ISIS began to arise to power. Who did they march out, make them kneel, and videotape the slicing off of their heads? They marched out Christians. But Christian folks, let us not forget that there are other human beings who are Muslims on this earth who were killed too, because they weren't a particular brand of Muslim, particular sect of Muslim. There is evil in the world. Evil that must be dealt with. On this Good Friday, I certainly trust that you understand when a dictator like Bashar Assad in Syria is backed up by a dictator in Russia who dare put out, who dare is able to allow the words to come out of his mouth that the sarin gas poisoning of his people was a fabricated story made up by the United States so that we could bomb them. I hope you see the job, Christian folks, pastors, and imams and rabbis. I hope you see the work that is before you. I'll be right back.
Here comes old Rose. She's looking mighty fine. Here comes...
Yesterday, and I'll be talking about this even later on in the show, but I mentioned to you that if you expect someone to be on time, especially if they're from Brazil, if they happen to be from the inner city, or if they happen to be black. You can be from the inner city and not be black. If they happen to be from Brazil, if they happen to be from the inner city, if they happen to be black, if you hold someone to blame for being habitually late, you are now a racist. I'm talking about tardy. I mean, if you hold someone to blame for being habitually late and tardy, you are now clearly a racist because you don't understand what's going on in their culture. That's an interesting sidebar from where I really want to talk to you about here today, because when we look at the seeds of evil, the seeds of nuttiness that are being planted on top of the seeds that you are trying to lay down half-heartedly in too many cases as people of faith. I hope you understand what you're up against. Churches in southern Egypt have canceled Easter this year because of threats of violence. That means that the people who are threatening the violence have won. And listen, folks, let me not pretend as though I know what I would do to go marching in and pressing forward anyway, even in the face of death, if you showed up at church. I only know what I have done in the face of peril in defense of my faith in the past and in defense of my country now. Always facing perilous times. But I don't live in Egypt. I don't live in China. I just know that I have a bully pulpit here. And I know that I become inflamed when I feel as though my government is trying to encroach upon my personal freedoms. But I've never lived in China under constant threat of being killed. I have not lived in Egypt. So it's one thing to say what you do here. Yes, I've been to the mission fields and so forth in the Middle East. I've been to the mission fields in Brazil and so forth, but that's not China. That's not Egypt. So I don't know. I know what I'd like to do. I know what I think I would do. But you only know what you will do when you're faced with the reality of doing it. So, churches in southern Egypt, they canceled their Easter this year because of the threat of death. And I say yes. In that case, the terrorists win. How do you fight evil? You face it. You stand up to it with the faith that if, in fact, you are mowed down, it was not in vain, that your living was not in vain. And on this Good Friday, where we commemorate the life of innocence, as we Christians believe that was taken or given on a cross over 2,000 years ago. We trust that from that, as a nation that was founded on those Judeo-Christian principles of sacrifice, and Americans, the time has come now where we must examine that word again in all of its facets, because it is necessary that we understand what must be sacrificed, what we are sacrificing, and the sacrifice that we're going to have to make in order to retake a nation that is sliding into the abyss, because we no longer have the people of faith that saw it necessary to emblaze upon our money in God we trust. Where are those? I know I know that they exist. I know that they're around. But there is such a loud crowd out there now that we're screaming into. There is such a loud crowd out there now a noisy crowd that we're screaming into. And the message that we're trying to convey is taking on so many facets and so many voices that you and I have to wonder, is the message of Christ being preached, or is the message of some church? Oh, I said something right there. Is it the message of Christ being preached, or is it the message of some church? They are not often one in the same. Even though he wanted to build his church upon the rock of who he was. But the church has built its church upon the rock of who they want him to be. Good Friday. Reflect on who he is, because few people have problems with him. But so many people have problems with so-called Christians. Who he is, who you are, or who you're trying to be, and so you're a follower of his, what we have become. What we have become. Somewhere in there, we've gotten off track. I'll be back.
Country Jesus, hillbilly blues, that's where I learned my lick. Up from coast to coast and line to line to every county there. I'm talking about that outlaw axis cutting through the air. Anywhere, y'all, everywhere, y'all. I heard it, I heard it, I heard it on the X.
CL, Good Friday. It's time to reflect on what we believe, because it is a faith proposition. The Judeo-Christian ethic would have us believe, and I do believe, that we are created in the image of our Creator God. I believe that. And over the period of time, what I was trying to say and am conveying to you, especially in that last segment, is that we have, in too many cases, created God in our image. That's how you get to the point where God or Jesus in these films, and I enjoy them. I enjoy the Passion of the Christ. I enjoy The Greatest Story Ever Told. And I don't know why Christ always has to have a British accent, but he does. And in movies like that, of course, in Passion of the Christ, he has he's speaking in Arabic, and there's some subtitles, Aramaic, and there are subtitles that are there, which just fine. The story is great. Gibson did a fantastic job on that film. But what I'm saying is this is why you have black Jesus, you have white Jesus, you have British accent Jesus, and all of that, because the intent now in too many sects and too many ideas is to create God again, create him again in our image. You have such confusion when it comes to this. And as Paul Harvey once famously portrayed, if I were the devil, if I were the devil, I would create the exact type of confusion that somehow we have created. To bring it home, and I've told this story once or twice before on this show, but I want to share this with you again about a trip that I had to inner city Detroit. Inner city Detroit. I was there speaking to a church group, and then I wanted to visit within the community. I want to go in and just talk to man on the street, preacher on the street, evangelist, whatever you want to call me at that point in time, on the street. And I wanted to talk to some gangbangers. I wanted to go into the inner city and talk to people who are gangbangers. So I had this one youth pastor who was able to actually take me to the gangbang central, where the gangbangers hung out. And I was able to ask them this question. I want you to listen real close, because it's going to tell you something, people of faith. It's going to tell you something, Christian folks, here on Good Friday. I asked one who evidently was the spokesman for the group, not necessarily the leader of the gang, but they have a spokesman, they have a leader. So the spokesman for the group, about 15 of them, I asked them, have any of you ever been in a church? You guys ever go to, what happened? Did you ever go to church? And their answer was, yeah, sure, all of us have been to church. What happened? What happened? Why? How did you wind up here? Why did you wind up in a gang? This was their answer. This was the answer the spokesman gave me. He was speaking for the group because the rest of them were nodding their heads in agreement. He said, "Preacher, I know where the church is that you have just spoken at, because we've been there. But there's a church across the way from it that preaches that there's something wrong with gay marriage, and then, they condemn it. But the church around the corner from it, they're for it. And then that church across over there," he pointed, I could see it, the steeple of it. "They believe that abortion is okay. But then the church around the corner from it, they believe that abortion's wrong." He was telling me that they pay attention to what the church has to say about social issues. But then he said something that I will never forget. But he said, "Preacher, which one of those churches should I go to?" How we wound up out here, this is what he said. He said, "We wind up out here because we trust each other, and we trust these streets, because the streets are the same. They give us the same message every day." Christians, people of faith, rabbis, imams, preachers, pastors, as you get ready to go into your beautiful sanctuaries on this Sunday morning to celebrate the resurrection of Christ, hear me, there are young people on the streets of America that's telling you they're out on the streets because the message that is being sent is not a unified message. But the streets they can trust because the message of the streets are the same every day. Only thing I could tell him was Jesus Christ is the same. Yesterday, today, and forever. He didn't have a problem with Jesus. On this Good Friday, will you hear me? He didn't have a problem with Jesus. He had a problem with followers. I hope we realize what we're up against here in 2017. And it's been going on ever since we sent the message to our educational system that God was no longer welcome in our schools. Oh, yeah, you've heard that. You've heard it over and over and over again. Well, there's a lot of other places that he's been kicked out of as well. And being the choice giver that he has always been, you do have the choice of how you will accept or reject the instructions. My discipline tells me that it's a faith proposition. I remember what I told you about that person coming, telling you, trust me. I'm going to give you these seeds. I know you've never heard of digging in the dirt before, but if I give you these seeds and you plant them, you can eat. We're in a state of starvation. There's a reason for that. We have to wonder why. I'm CL. We'll be right back. Hey, girlie, what's going on?
Born down in a dead man's town. The first kick that took us when I hit the ground. End up like a dog that's been beat too much till you spend half your life just to cover.
CL, back with you on this Good Friday. And I have to tell you something, folks. It is one of those days that we often reflect on our faith. It is a faith proposition that we do engage in when we talk about our Christianity. And don't forget what I have just told you. I'm going to get back there before the end of the show. Most people have no problem with Christ. They have the problem with Christians. So let's tell his story when we think of this holy week that we have just come out of and the holy day coming up on Sunday, Resurrection Sunday. Joining me now is someone who has created the genesis of a film that I believe is one of the greats of all time, Woodlawn. Todd Gerald. Woodlawn is a film of one hope, one dream, one way, a true story that certainly inspired the movie. Welcome to the C.L. Bryant Show. And Todd, I want to welcome you to the C.L. Bryant Show for the first time. Thank you so much for being there. Is he there, Jay?
Hello.
Hey, Todd, are you there? All right.
Yes, I'm here. I appreciate it. I heard the tail end of that. Thank you so much for having me.
Todd, I am so grateful that you are here. I want to tell us something about the genesis. What was the genesis for Woodlawn? Bring people up to speed. Some may have forgotten that they've seen it. Some may have forgotten the genesis of it. Tell us, what was the genesis for that?
Well, really, I was raised. For those who've seen the movie, I'm the little boy in the movie. I'm obviously not a little boy now, but I was the coach's son. And the older I got, as a child, you're seeing everything for the first time, so everything seems, normal. You don't realize the gravity of the things that you're witnessing necessarily as a child, or don't, grasp the profundity of the moment, so to speak. And the older I got, the more I realized what an amazing story this was. My dad took a job. He was an assistant coach at Woodlawn High School in the middle of segregated Birmingham, Alabama. And in 1971, he became the head football coach at Woodlawn. And for a little bit of background, Woodlawn High School was about 2,500 students. There were about 7 white students, maybe 9 by the time he became head coach, out of that number. And those were real pioneers. Those were people whose pastors had trained them up, their parents had trained them up to be ready for things. But in 1971, the federal government said, we've made this law a while back with the Civil Rights Act, and you folks in the South are not adhering to that, and so we're going to force this. And they began busing students.
Right.
So my dad, in his first year as head coach, 1971, was the first year that they started busing African-American students in from Hayes High School. Woodlawn was the easternmost white high school. It and Banks and Huffman High School were the eastern high schools, and Hayes High School was the easternmost black high school.
So it surrounded the idea that race became the central idea, or the central, let's say, catalyst for unrest during your point in time. Let me ask you this. Now that we've come so far from there to here, over 40 years, from there to here,
right?
What do you make of still the type of unrest we're seeing in the streets of America? It seems as though 40 years has not changed much. How does Todd Gerald see that?
That's a great statement, and one that I think that there's a lot of layers to. And I wrote an op-ed a couple of days ago just about what Dr. King, what his vision was, and how far we've come, and yet we've regressed in terms of race relations in this country. But it almost, in my mind, has nothing to do with where we were back in 1971.
No.
I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Absolutely not. No, absolutely not. No, we're not.
It's the issues that were there when you have a group of people who are oppressed and systems are set up that are intentionally holding people down and separating people the way that they were. these were real issues. When you read the letter that he wrote from the
Birmingham jail, yeah.
And anybody who has never read that letter should pull that up on Google and read it.
And you know what, Todd? The thing about that letter that was written from the Birmingham jail, Dr. King was actually indicting. He was so surprised that the Christian pastors were not standing with him in this particular fight. He was disappointed that they were not standing. Now I was alive. I was 10 when the Civil Rights Act in 65 was signed. I was 10 years old, 10 years old. And let me tell you something, man. You hit the nail on the head, because you're referencing 1971. I can go back and reference 1961. And when we look at kids who are saying to one another and are being told by the news media that 2017 has anything to do with the 70s and the 60s, that's delusional. What do you say?
Well, and that's absolutely, and that's really what Dr. King was dealing with was real oppression, and this that's going on today. It's not just in the black community. We've got people who benefit from separating people, from dividing people, and putting people into groups because they gain political power in doing so. And you said in a speech a few years ago that, and it was a gutsy thing to say as a black man. It's a gutsy thing to refer to the plantation as a white man. But there are people who are trying to keep folks separated by race and by gender and by all these different things because there's political power in it, and they don't realize that they're being exploited, that this is not truth, that you have opportunities. Now, that's not to say that there isn't still racism out there and that there aren't people who are racist, but our system allows for people to be successful.
Yes, it does.
And most white people and most policemen are not against black people.
No, absolutely not. And let me ask you this, Todd, because both of us are Southerners. I'm a Southern boy. You're a Southern boy. One white, one black. You've lived the story of an interracial family, interracial household, and all of that. Wonderful thing. I've been in an interracial marriage for over 40 years. I've seen it, seen the evolution of all of that, and so forth. But now let's be bold enough to talk about this, and I want to keep you through the break. Let's be bold enough to talk about this. In fact, Todd, when I come back, I want to bring you back in on the other side of the break. On with me is Todd Gerals, who is the author and the creator of the film Woodlawn. I'll be back. Don't go anywhere. CL back with you on this Good Friday, the day that we commemorate the crucifixion of who I believe to be the Savior of the world, Jesus Christ. And this is a holy day for us in Christianity, but my day, the day that I really love to shout about is the day that's coming up this Sunday, Resurrection Sunday. For me, it is the hope of humanity. On with me is Todd Geralds, and we were talking about, Todd, wanting to express the courage to deal with subjects that normally we put on the sideline, let somebody else talk about. But I think you and I may have the courage to talk about it. And I want to talk to you offline here, maybe next week. This week, I know it's probably really busy for both of us. But Todd, when we look at groups that have sprang up in this country, like Hands Up, Don't Shoot, like Black Lives Matter, that are funded by an old white man like George Soros, it makes us wonder, what is the purpose? There has to be a reason why he would do that. What do you say it is?
Well, as I mentioned before, there's great, I think, in the minds of these people, like George Soros and some others who are wealthy and fund these things. There's a lot of power in dividing people and bringing about chaos. George Soros is no lover of America. He's also no lover of the black man necessarily. He's a lover of the power he's gaining through this.
Yes.
And I think that there's a lot of that goes on under the guise of, hey, let me be a spokesperson for you oppressed, people, when there's a lot of power to be gained by the people doing that.
And people don't understand the power that is gained by someone like Soros when he has these types of mannequins and puppets that he can manipulate. Right. People don't understand that, do they, Todd?
Not at all. And what it does is it takes situations that are real and where now some of these were just complete fabrications, but to just acknowledge that there are times where mistakes are made, and there are occasionally rogue police that may do things wrong. When 99.9% of the time nothing has gone wrong, but you minimize actually the actual wrongdoing by saying that all this is going on all the time, and you just create chaos and anarchy. And that really is, when you look at what went on in Ferguson and what went on in Baltimore, and you've got what I believe is you have an underlying anger in the black community at times, because there have been so many lies told for so many years about, we're going to fix this, we're going to do that, and there's been such an investment of hope in individuals and systems and government to fix things that, first of all, are not fixable by any one man, but by the heart of
the people
and
in that community.
And it's also right, and there's a lie being told that most of the hearts are against you, and that is a lie.
That is absolutely a lie. And there's another lie that is being promoted that is dangerous, especially in the inner city where most of the violence resides, especially in cities like Chicago, Detroit, Los Angeles. And that is a lack of respect and an attack upon the police. Now, the reason I bring that up is because I know a lot of good citizens who are elderly, who live in the inner city, who are absolutely scared to death. And what has happened is that they have become prisoners, Todd, in a place they cannot escape, because the police don't come in to see about them anymore, because even the police are beginning to stand down. There is a certain evil that has transpired because of a lack of respect for authority. How can we go on as Americans with this type of message being fed to our young people?
Well, I really think that we can't. We've got to have people who are willing to stand up and speak truth. And it's a scary thing, because the the speech police have been out in force, since the 90s, I would say, really in a strong way, more and more and more. I can remember when the term political correctness kind of started being thrown around out there, and from the outset, there were a lot of us who thought, well, this is just restriction of free speech. This is not. There's nothing correct about this,
Right?
And to say things that are true today, it's often you're going to be vilified and demonized for saying things that are just true.
Yeah.
And you don't understand, especially as a white person. It can be, for a white person to say something, you have no right to say it. But really and truly, it might be worse for the African American conservative to stand up and say something because it's dismissed, or you're an Uncle Tom, or this, that, or the other. And so to have the courage to speak truth, that really, there's a chapter in my next book that'll come out about Tyndale House is publishing a book. I was talking about people who, in the face of great obstacles, maintained their focus. And one of the people in that chapter is Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King was dealing with actual, real obstacles, but he maintained his focus and he did things the right way, no matter what the cost.
Yeah.
And that's what it's going to take. I mean,
and he did it in a non-violent way. Tell us how to get a hold of your latest work. Tell people how to get a hold of you and how to access your mind if they have so desire.
Sure. My email is the easiest way. I always respond to emails. It's Todd@woodlawnthebook.com. And the book itself is the actual historical, everything that happened during this time period. And, movies always are compressing things and stretching things and doing things just for the sake of the movie. So there's some things in the movie that are not true, but they are consistent with the theme, and things were done in the right way. I was very happy with the movie. Thought it was great. Did give an overall accurate picture of what was going on. But you can reach me that way. You can reach me on Facebook, Todd Gerald, and author of Woodlawn on Facebook. And my website is woodlawnthebook.com, but we're actually going to be doing some updating to that. The next book doesn't come out until, right now Tyndale House says January of 18, but I'm trying to get them to push it back to football season because there's a lot of football in this book.
That'd be great.
Well.
Todd Gerald, I want to thank you for being on with me. I want to talk to you. I'll talk to you next week. I'll set up a call with you next week. Got a lot to talk to you about. Listen, God bless you. God keep you for being on with me. I'll be back with you real soon. I'm CL. This is the CL Bryant Show. Back in a minute. CL, back with you on this Good Friday. We're streaming live throughout the greatest nation on the face of the earth, the greatest success story the world has ever known, and that is America. I want to welcome aboard our friends in Wilmington, North Carolina, as well as our friends in southern Arkansas and East Texas and throughout the fruited plains of America. Joining me now is Steve Hawkins. Now, Steve Hawkins is an attorney extraordinaire, a champion of justice reform. He is, in fact, 25 years advocate of justice reform, and he brings a very strong background in working across party lines for this great cause. And on this day, when I can point to the greatest atrocity, the greatest injustice that was ever seen, even to this day. It is remembered as one of the greatest injustices ever seen, the crucifixion of innocents in Christ. On this Good Friday, I welcome Steve Hawkins back to the C.L. Bryant Show. Steve, thank you so much for being there.
CL, glad to be back. Wishing you Good Friday as well.
I know that you are a champion. And folks, I want you to hear these next couple of segments. The time that I have with him is going to be short, and I got to have you back, and we can have you on much longer. But I know that you are a champion of justice reform. When we speak of that, particularly here in Louisiana, we're very much involved in justice reform. But when we speak of that, a lot of politicians run for the hills because they think that we're talking about being soft on crime. Please talk to our audience about why that is not the case.
Thanks, CL. You know, we need to, of course, be smart on crime, which means that we certainly want to make sure that those individuals who could do physical harm to our communities and to our families are incarcerated as they should be. But we need to be smart on crime. We have to realize in a state like Louisiana, where you have individuals serving time for low-level drug offenses, having to do much more with their chemical addiction, when you have people with mental health problems, when you have CL veterans coming back from fighting overseas with issues, demons that they're chasing, that these folks need help and not a prison cell. And the organization that I run, the Coalition for Public Safety, we bring together some of the major conservative organizations in the country, such as Freedom Works and Faith and Freedom Coalition and Grover Norquist's Americans for Tax Reform, and also some of the progressive groups in the country, but all coming together realizing that we cannot keep spending the kinds of money that we spend on justice reform. We need to ensure that we protect public safety, but give those people who have not committed serious crimes opportunities for redemption, which is what the Good Friday message is all about.
Is this the bridge that does unite party lines? Because evidently this is something that not only conservatives, but also fiscal conservatives, but also those who are liberals. Is this the bridge where we very well could find common ground, and are we finding that common ground in your estimation?
Yes, this is the bridge, CL, and we're finding that common ground around the country. When I look at in states like Oklahoma and hopefully as the Louisiana session starts up, we will see legislative leaders and governors coming across party lines, recognizing that this is one of these issues that unites people. In Louisiana, polling last year showed that 82% of Louisiana voters wanted justice reform. Desiring to see alternatives to incarceration for low-level offenders, desiring to see that people do not return to prison but have educational and housing and job opportunities. And so I'm hoping that in this new session that's before us, CL, that we will see some needed changes happen in Louisiana that will save the state hundreds of millions of dollars, and some of that money can go back to reinvest in community needs, and hopefully we'll begin to see the dawn of a new day, as it were.
Folks, we're on with Steve Hawkins, who is a champion of justice reform in this country. I'm a former president of the NAACP and have had to use, when we sued the school board 25 years ago, in Garland, Texas, the NAACP Legal Defense Fund. We had to tap into the knowledge that was there, and what we are seeing is someone who has a vast spectrum. He has covered a vast spectrum of legal defense, and in our nation today, Steve, what is most important to folks is, does it make fiscal sense? Some people don't see the fiscal responsibility or the fiscal common sense in reforming the way sentencing is done, the mandatory sentencing in particular. Share with us, or at least help us see how fiscally responsible it is to address justice reform.
Well, CL, earlier this week I was at Reverend Mills's family forum event, the briefing that he had in Baton Rouge, and the panel was there was a there was a justice reform panel, I will say, and on that panel was one of the wardens from down in Angola, where Angola is unique in that it runs the only seminary program for inmates in the country. And just incredible speakers, and you can see how through faith they're helping these men in Angola rebuild their lives and hopefully not return to prison.
Right. Hold that thought right there, Steve. Sure. I hear the music. I want to hold you through this break, and we'll be back. I know you have to go here shortly, but I want you to continue the story, because here in Louisiana, we definitely know how Angola has evolved. Back with Steve Hawkins in just a minute. CL, back with you on this Good Friday. And on Good Friday, it is very much appropriate and necessary to examine justice reform. I would imagine that when you think about one of the greatest crimes committed against one single individual, you must think of the crucifixion of Jesus Christ. However, unlike the crimes and the injustice that is committed against individuals today, his was for the betterment of mankind, as my discipline teaches me. On with me is Steve Hawkins, and he is a champion, modern-day champion of justice reform. And Steve, you were talking about the benefits of reform that is going on right here in my home state of Louisiana, down at Angola. Please tell us more about what's going on.
Sure. As I was saying, I was at a program that Reverend Mills had with the Family Forum earlier this week, and the Angola's program, which is unique in the country, where people who are incarcerated are go to seminary school, and some of those men, as they have left, have gone on to be faith leaders and productive citizens. Now, this is a program that costs a fraction of what it costs to keep somebody locked up for a year.
Wow.
I think that figure, CL, in Louisiana is over $13,000, and and if I remember correctly,
That's right.
this program, yeah. And if I remember correctly, this program costs about $1,500 a person to operate, and so we have to get our priorities straight, CL. We need to have a justice system that is reserved for people who will do us harm, but not people who we're mad at. Not people who have done something that makes them a knucklehead. But really, we're talking about folks who need treatment and second chances, and that's what this Easter weekend is all about: redemption, second chances, understanding that all of us are. None of us want to be ever remembered for the worst deed in our lives, and some of us need second chances, third chances.
Right.
But if we do that, we will. If we redirect some of the hundreds of millions of dollars that are spent in Louisiana, the governor's task force that's finished suggesting some reforms, the state would save $300 million. And if only a third of that even went back into preventative programs, we could stop seeing the growth of the prison system in Louisiana and beginning to keep people out of prison, not needlessly destroying people's lives, pulling men away from their children and families. The ripple effects in doing the right thing and understanding that somebody who's committed a nonviolent offense, if we can get that person back on track, the ripple effects are positive for that individual, for his or her family. But when we lock that same person up, we have just the opposite effect, where we actually do more harm, not only to that individual, but to their families. We destabilize. We end up with 3 generations of people from the same family going to Angola.
Wow.
That has to stop.
I knew a family that had 3 generations of convicts that went to Angola, ministered to them. The ripple effects that you're talking about, Steve, is so important. And finally, I just want to thank you for what you do. How do people get a hold of the coalition? Tell folks how to engage with Public Safety Coalition.
I would be happy to. So we are the Coalition for Public Safety, and our website is coalitionforpublicsafety.org. And we'd be happy to get folks information on what's happening in Louisiana and, of course, around the country.
Coalitionforpublicsafety.org. Coalitionforpublicsafety.org. I had a chance to be up there with them about 6 months ago at one of your gatherings, and I was absolutely impressed by the gathering. It was a gathering of men, pastors, and who were across party lines. We all had one thing in common, and that was seeing that our nation is secured on the streets, in our homes, and wherever we may think about it. And Steve, I want to thank you again for your work. I mean, man, on this Good Friday, let me say, I believe you're doing the Lord's work. There is no question about it. And may he continue to bless you and keep you in your endeavors. Thank you so much, man, for being on. And we're going to have you back real soon.
I hope so. God bless.
I'm C.L. Bryant. This is the C.L. Bryant Show. We were just on with Steve Hawkins, who is an incredible advocate for justice reform. And it is necessary now that we understand that hideous and heinous crimes don't necessarily translate to crimes of stupid. Although you can't really cure stupid either. But we'll talk a little bit about it when I return. I'm CL.
Very superstitious.
In the full scope of things, as I started this program tonight, I want to bring it full circle. 90,000 lives in the past year have been lost because of their faith. Many Christians, many Muslims, many Jews around the world. The humanitarian outlets that keep track of these numbers of lives that are lost, that are martyred because of their faith, estimate that the 90,000 number is low, because there are so many instances in places like China, Egypt, Middle East, that you really can't track the number of lives that are lost because of their faith. And then I want you to remember that there was a question that I asked from the outset of the show, and that was this: could you have been an early Christian? This is one of the highest and holiest days in Christianity. For me, it is this Sunday, because the victory is found in Resurrection Sunday. The defeat, the darkness, the despair is found on this Friday. But the victory through the long night of the weekend is found on Sunday morning, Resurrection Sunday morning. And I do believe that there has never been a personality, a human being, to walk the earth that was ever a bigger shot than Jesus Christ. Kings, princes, whoever you may point to, presidents, men of great wealth, have all lived and died. But Jesus Christ is still the biggest shot that has ever walked the earth. Not because he wanted to be, but because of a certain humility that he allowed himself to exemplify. And as Scripture has told us, and what I believe in Scripture to be true, because he did humble himself even unto the death of the cross. Now God has highly exalted him and has given him a name which is above every name. And as I believe it, and in my discipline, that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow and every tongue shall one day confess that he is Lord. But could you have been an early Christian who faced the lions and the lions' dens, who faced the fire, who faced the beheadings? If you are one who says that you could have been, or if you're one like me who says you don't know until you face the lion's den, until you face the beheadings, until you face the fire, you have to come to the reality, the cold, sober reality, that there is evil in our world as we speak that is seeking to destroy any voice that may, in fact, speak, exalt the name of Jesus Christ. Those Christians in Egypt have canceled Easter because they're afraid. And if I have any message for you Christians, read your Bibles. his death, and certainly his resurrection is there to prove that he himself wanted to cast out all fear of what we may face on this earth. It is to give us the strength to hear his words when he said, "The world offers you that tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." On this Good Friday, let us look at the victory that is found in our Judeo-Christian ethic and in a nation that has been, yes, the salt of the earth. But if that salt, America, loses its ability to preserve, if that salt loses its purpose, we are told by that same one who found himself hanging upon the tree, "You are good for nothing, but be thrown out and trampled under the foot of men." Do you hear the footsteps coming? Have you lost your ability to savor? Have you lost your ability to preserve? Are you no longer America, the light of the world? I believe we still are. We just need to find the path again. I'm CL, back to close it out in just a minute. CL here to close it out on this Good Friday. Yeah, we must reach them all. We must reach them all, everyone. Remember I told you the story about trusting the person who comes and tells you about digging in the dirt, planting the seeds, and watching it come up. That is important. That is important to understand the parable of reaping and sowing. And here as we close this show today, when we think about the purpose of Good Friday and why we commemorate it, because there was one who did in fact give his life. He actually dug into the dirt of humanity in order to plant the seed of faith in his victory that Sunday, so that we could reap abundance, even in tough times, even in difficult times, perilous times. We could cast our cares at his feet, because everything that we go through is common to him, a name above every name. That's my discipline. That's why I love him, Jesus Christ. And so, wherever you are, whoever you are, if you just wanted to visit a church, you might be a Muslim. You might be a Jew. I've visited many mosques. I have visited many synagogues. Just to share in with other people of godly faith. But I invite each and every one of you, whoever you are, from whatever background you are. My home church is Word of God Ministries. We invite you to come out, visit with us. But whatever church you may pass on this Easter Sunday, you may be a Jew, you may be a Muslim. The bridge that we must build now is to share with one another the better things about ourselves. And I really believe that that is found in who we are as people of faith, as Americans, in this land of e pluribus unum, where we do practice and we do defend religious freedom. On Good Friday, I trust that it can be good. As we look at Egyptians, so many areas are canceling Easter because of violence. Let us be good. I want to thank God for bringing us to the close of yet another day, and I want to thank Him for our men and women in uniform around the globe who defend our right to speak our minds. And until I'm able to talk to you again, I'm CL. Happy Easter. Happy Resurrection Sunday. And may God bless and keep you all.
We'll stand by your side, and the bond will never be torn.